Be attentive. By the servant of God, Luisa, little daughter of the divine will. Section 2. Volume 12, August 14th, 1917. I would like the tears of my Jesus, in order to cry together with him over these false sanctities, and make everyone know how true sanctity is in doing the divine will and in living in the divine volition. This sanctity puts its roots so deeply that there is no danger that it may oscillate, because it fills heaven and earth and finds its support everywhere. This soul is firm, not subject to inconstancies or voluntary defects. She is attentive to her duties. She is the most sacrificed and detached from everyone and everything, even from spiritual directions themselves. And since her roots are deep, she rises up so high that the flowers and fruits bloom in heaven. She is so hidden in God that the earth sees little or nothing of this soul. The divine will keeps her absorbed within itself. Only Jesus is the author, the life, the form of the sanctity of this enviable creature. Volume 12, June 20th, 1918. Continuing in my usual state, my sweet Jesus made himself seen around me, all full of attentions. He seemed to be watching me in everything. As he was doing this, a rope came out from his heart, coming toward my heart. And if I was attentive, the rope remained fixed in my heart, and Jesus moved this rope and amused himself. Then my beloved Jesus told me, "My daughter, I am all attention for souls. If they reciprocate me, paying as much attention to me, the ropes of my love remain fixed in their heart, and I multiply my attentions and amuse myself. Otherwise the ropes remain loose, and my love rejected and saddened." Volume 12, February 4th, 1919. Beloved daughter, newborn of my life, come into my will. Come and see how much there is to substitute for my many acts still suspended, not yet substituted for by creatures. My will must be within you like the primary gear of a clock. If it moves, all the other gears move, and the clock signals the hours and the minutes. So all the accord is in the motion of this primary wheel. And if this first wheel has no motion, the clock is stopped. In the same way, the first wheel within you must be my will, which must give motion to your thoughts, to your heart, to your desires, to everything. And since my will is the central wheel of my being, of creation, and of all things, your motion, coming out from that center, will come to substitute for as many acts of creatures. Multiplying in the motions of all as central motion, it will come to place before my throne, on their behalf, the acts of the creatures, and will substitute for everything. Therefore, be attentive. Your mission is great and fully divine. Volume 12, February 27th, 1919. Freedom! Freedom! Come all into my will, and you will enjoy true freedom. Outside of my will, how many obstructions does the soul not find? But in my will she is free. I leave her free to love me as she wants. Even more, I tell her, lay down your human remains, take what is divine. I am not mean and jealous with my goods. I want you to take everything. Love me immensely. Take all my love. Make my power your own. Make my beauty your own. The more you take, the happier your Jesus will be. The earth forms few tabernacles for me. The hosts are almost numbered. And then the sacrileges, the irreverences that they do to me. Oh, how offended and hindered my love is. But in my will, no hindrance, not a shadow of offense. The creature gives me love, divine reparations, and complete correspondence. She substitutes together with me for all the evils of the human family. Be attentive, and do not move from the point at which I call you and want you. Volume 12, April 15th, 1919. Now, if my resurrection symbolizes the saints of the living in my will, and this with reason, since each act, word, step, and so forth done in my will is a divine resurrection that the soul receives, it is a mark of glory that she receives. It is to go out of herself in order to enter the divinity, and to love, work, and think, hiding herself in the refulgent sun of my volition. What is the wonder if the soul remains fully risen and identified with the very sun of my glory, and symbolizes my resurrected humanity? But few are those who dispose themselves to this, because even in sanctity, souls want something for their own good, while the sanctity of living in my will has nothing of its own. Everything is of God. It takes too much for souls to dispose themselves to this, to strip themselves of their own goods. Therefore they will not be many. You are not in the number of the many, but of the few. Therefore be always attentive to the call, and to your continuous flight. Volume 12, June 4th, 1919. My beloved Jesus has told me so many things, and have I been attentive in doing all that he taught me? Oh, how meager I am in pleasing him! How incapable I feel of everything! So his many teachings will be my condemnation. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, why do you afflict yourself? The teachings of your Jesus will never serve to condemn you. Even if you did only once what I have taught you, you would still place a star in the heaven of your soul. In fact, just as I extended a heaven over the human nature, and my Fiat studded it with stars, in the same way I extended a heaven in the depth of the soul, and the Fiat of the good which she does, because any good is a fruit of my will, comes to embellish this heaven with stars. Therefore, if she does 10 goods, she places 10 stars in it. If 1,000, 1,000 stars. So, think rather of repeating my teachings as much as you can, in order to stud the heaven of your soul with stars, so that it will not be inferior to the heaven that shines upon your horizon. And each star will carry the mark of the teaching of your Jesus. How much honor you will give me. Volume 12, June 27th, 1919. Now, as creatures too practice virtue, they form little springs in their hearts, from which their little rivulets gush forth, which cross mine, and, spurting together, glorify the celestial Father, and descend for the good of all, forming such harmony between heaven and earth, that even the angels remain astonished at the enchanting sight. Therefore, be attentive in practicing the virtue of my heart, so as to let me open the springs of my graces. Volume 12, March 19th, 1920. My daughter, when I asked you if you would consent to live in my volition, and you accepted, saying, I say yes, not in my will, but in yours, so that my yes may have all the power and the value of a yes from a divine volition. That yes exists, and will always exist, just as my will shall exist. Therefore your life has ended. Your will no longer has reason to live for itself. This is why I told you that since all creatures are in my will, you come in the name of the whole human family, to place at the foot of my throne, in a divine way, the thoughts of all in your mind, in order to give me the glory of each thought. In your gaze, in your word, in your action, in the food you take, and even in your sleep, those of all. Your life must embrace everything. Don't you see that sometimes, when you are oppressed by the weight of my privation, and something escapes you of what you do, and you do not unite all the human family together, I reprimand you? And if you don't listen to me, afflicted I tell you, if you do not want to follow me, I will do it by myself. Life in my will is to live without one's own life, without personal reflections. It is the life that embraces all lives together. Be attentive in this, and do not fear. Volume 12, September 25th, 1920. My daughter, my truth is light, and in communicating it to souls who are limited beings, I communicate my truths with a limited light, since they are not capable of receiving immense light. However, it happens as with the sun. While it appears up there in the heavens as a limited circled globe of light, the light which it spreads invades the whole earth. It warms, it fecundates. So it is impossible for man to count the plants fecundated and the lands illuminated and warmed by the sun. While he can see it up high in the heavens in a twinkling of an eye, he cannot see where its light ends up, nor the good that it does. The same happens with the sons of the truths which I communicate to the souls. They appear as limited within them, but as soon as these truths come out, how many souls do they not touch? How many minds do they not enlighten? How much good do they not do? This is why you saw me place a globe of light inside of you. These are my truths which I communicate to you. Be attentive in receiving them, and more attentive in communicating them, in order to give course to the light of my truths. Volume 12, January 5th, 1921. Now, in order to live in my will, the soul must give the shape of my mind to her mind, the shape of my gaze, of my word, of my motion, to hers. And by doing this, she loses her shape and acquires mine. She does nothing other than give continuous deaths to the human being, and continuous life to the divine will. In this way, the soul will be able to complete the life of my will within herself. Otherwise, this prodigy, this shape fully modeled on mine, will never be accomplished completely. Only my will, which is eternal and immense, allows her to find everything. It reduces the past and the future to one single point. And in this one point, she finds all the beating hearts, all the living minds, all of my works in act. And the soul, making my will her own, does everything, satisfies for all, loves for all, and does good to all and to each one, as if all were one. Who can ever reach such extent? No virtue, no heroism, not even martyrdom, can stand before my will. All remain behind the works done in my will. Therefore be attentive, and let the mission of my will have its fulfillment in you. Volume 12, January 24th, 1921. So will the third Fiat be. It will germinate within you. The ear of grain will be formed. Only the priest will have knowledge of it, then a few souls, and then it will spread. It will spread and will follow the same path as creation and redemption. The more crushed you feel, the more the ear of the third Fiat grows and is fecundated in you. Therefore be attentive and faithful. Volume 12, February 2nd, 1921. These three Fiats have the same value and power. You disappear. It is the Fiat that acts, and therefore you too can say in my omnipotent Fiat, I want to create so much love, so many adorations, so many blessings, so much glory to my God as to compensate for everyone and for everything. Your acts will fill heaven and earth. They will multiply themselves with the acts of creation and of redemption, and will become one. All this will seem astonishing and incredible to some. In this case, they would have to doubt about my creative power. And then, when it is I who want it, and who give this power, every doubt ceases. Am I perhaps not free to do whatever I want, and to give to whomever I want? You, be attentive. I will be with you. I will overshadow you with my creative power, and I will accomplish what I want upon you. Volume 12, February 8th, 1921. Ah, my daughter, the creature rages more and more in evil. How many machinations of ruin they are preparing! They will reach the point of exhausting evil itself. But while they are occupied with following their own way, I will be occupied in making the Fiat Voluntas Tua have its completion and fulfillment. and my will reign upon the earth, but in a completely new way. I will be occupied with preparing the era of the third Fiat, in which my love will show off in a marvelous and unheard of way. Ah, yes, I want to confuse man completely in love. Therefore be attentive. I want you with me in preparing this celestial and divine era of love. We will lend a hand to each other, and will work together. Volume 12, February 22nd, 1921. The generations will not end until my will reigns upon earth. My redeeming Fiat will place itself in the middle, between the creating Fiat and the sanctifying Fiat. They will interweave, all three together, and will accomplish the sanctification of man. The third Fiat will give such grace to the creature as to make him return almost to the state of origin. And only then, when I see man just as he came out from me, will my work be complete, and I will take my perpetual rest in the last Fiat. Only the life in my volition will give back to man his state of origin. Therefore be attentive, and together with me help me to complete the sanctification of the creature. Volume 13, September 6, 1921. Up until now I have made known what my humanity did, its virtue, its pains, in order to constitute the human family as heir of the goods of my humanity. Now I want to move forward, and I want to make known to it what my will did in my humanity, so as to constitute the new generations as heirs of my will, of the effects and the value it contains. Therefore be attentive in listening to me, and do not lose anything of the effects and the value of this will of mine, so that you may be the faithful bearer of these goods, the first link of union with my will, and of communication with the other creatures. Volume 13, October 18th, 1921. My daughter, today with your disturbance, you have prevented the sun of my person from rising in you. Disturbance is cloud between me and you, which prevents the rays from descending in you. And if the rays do not descend, how can you see the sun? If you knew what it means not to let my sun rise, and what great harm this is for you, and for the whole world, you would well be attentive never to trouble yourself. In fact, it is always night time for disturbed souls, and at night the sun does not rise. On the other hand, it is always daylight for the peaceful ones, and at whatever hour my sun wants to rise, the soul is always ready to receive the good of my coming. Volume 13, October 21st, 1921. Since my will is eternal, the more you try to be in it, making it more than your own life, the more you come to absorb within you my immutability and impassivity. Like a wheel, eternity spins, making its round around you, so that you may take part in everything, and nothing may escape you. And this, so that my will may remain honored and fully glorified in you. I want the first daughter of my will to lack nothing, not one distinction that belongs to me, which may make her be distinguished before the whole of heaven as the first beginning of the sanctity of living in my will. Therefore be attentive. Never go out of my will, that you may receive all the fragrances of my divinity, and so that, letting all that is yours come out, I may confirm all that is mine, and my will may remain in you as center of life. Volume 13, October 23rd, 1921. I began to speak to you about my will in a surprising way, and the more truths, effects, and values I spoke to you about, the more channels I opened from the sea for the good of others, so that these channels might give abundant water to all the earth. My working is communicative and always in act, without ever stopping. However many times these channels are covered with mud by creatures, others throw stones into them, and the water does not flow freely, but with difficulty. It is not that the sea does not want to give water, or that the water cannot penetrate everywhere because it is not clear. Rather, it is the creatures that oppose such a great good. Therefore, if they will read these truths, not being disposed, they will not understand a thing. They will remain confused and dazzled by the light of my truths. For those who are disposed, they will be light which will light them up, and water which will quench their thirst, in such a way that they will never want to detach themselves from these channels, because of the great good they feel, and the new life which flows in them. Therefore you too should be happy to open these channels for the good of your brothers, neglecting nothing about my truths, not even the tiniest thing, because as tiny as it may be, it can serve one of your brothers in order to draw water. So be attentive in opening these channels, and in contenting your Jesus, who has done so much for you. Volume 13, October 27th, 1921. Now, in the same way, I want my will to be like the soul to the body. The body, without the soul, is lifeless. Even though it contains all the senses, it cannot see, nor speak, hear, work. It is almost a useless thing, and maybe even unbearable. But if the body is animated, how many things can it not do? Yet, oh, how many render themselves useless and unbearable, because they are not animated by my will. They are like those electric systems without light, like those machines without motion, covered with rust and dust, and almost impotent to motion. Ah, how pitiful they are! Each thing which is not animated by my will is a life of sanctity that is missing. This is why I want to be in you, like the soul to the body, and my will shall make new surprises of creations. It will give new life to my love. It will do new works. It will manifest the mastery of my wisdom. It will give new motion to my power. Therefore be attentive and let me do, so that I may accomplish my great design, that the creature be animated by my will. Volume 13, October 29th, 1921. My daughter, everyone is stingy with me, even the good. How much stinginess they have toward me, how many restrictions, how many things they do not manifest of that which I tell them and which they comprehend about me. And you, how many times are you not stingy with me? Each time you either do not write what I tell you, or do not manifest it, is an act of stinginess toward me, because each additional knowledge that one acquires about me is one more glory, one more love that I receive from creatures. Therefore be attentive and more generous with me, and I will be more generous with you. Volume 13, November 12th, 1921. What a grace it is for you to know it, to be the first, like solar ray, to come out from the center of my sanctity, without ever detaching from it. Greater grace I could not give you. More portentous miracle I could not operate in you. Be attentive, my daughter, my ray, because every time you enter into my will and operate, it happens as when the sun hits the glass. Many suns are formed in it. In the same way, you repeat my life many times. You multiply it and give new life to my love. Volume 13, December 23rd, 1921. Daughter of my volition, as you operate and live in my will, you make more new acts come out from within my will, and you give me the field for new works, new love, and new power. How happy I feel that the creature, by living in my will, gives me the field to act. On the other hand, one who does not live in my will folds my arms and renders my will useless for her, while my being is led to motion and to work by the irresistible force of my love. Only the one who lives in my will gives me free field, and I animate even the tiniest acts of my divine will. I do not disdain to place the seal of divine virtue even on the lowest things. This is why I love so much the one who lives in my will, and I surround each of her acts with so much grace, with such dignity and decorum, because I want the honor and the glory of my divine work. Therefore, be attentive, and think well that if all that you do not do in my will, you will give uselessness to your Jesus. Ah, if you knew how idleness weighs on me, how it saddens me, you would be more attentive, wouldn't you? Volume 13, December 27th, 1921. Everything, everything to the little daughter of my will. I will be in continuous outpouring over you. Your thoughts will be the outpouring of my wisdom. Your gazes will be the outpouring of my light. Your breath, your heartbeat, your action will be preceded by my outpourings first, and then will have life. Be attentive, and in everything you do, think that it is an outpouring of your Jesus that comes to you. Volume 13, January 3rd, 1922. O soul who lives in my will, you alone are the purpose of the glory of creation, the decorum and the honor of my works, and the fulfillment of my redemption. In you, I centralize everything. May all relations be given back to you, and if out of weakness you should lack something, for the decorum and the honor of my will, I will make up for you in everything. Therefore be attentive and give this highest contentment to your Jesus. Volume 13, January 11th, 1922. Now see how these souls who live in my will are necessary to me. Since I have destined them to be like skin to the body of my church, and like circulation of life for all the members, they will be the ones who will give the proper growth to the members which have not grown, who will heal the wounded members, and who will restore the freshness, the beauty, the splendor of the whole mystical body by their continuous living in my will, rendering it fully similar to my head, which will sit in full majesty upon all those members. This is why the end of days cannot come if I do not have these souls who live as though dissolved in my will. They interest me more than anything. What impression would this mystical body make in the celestial Jerusalem without them? And if this is what interests me more than anything, it must interest you also more than anything, if you love me. From now on, I will give to your acts done in my will the virtue of circulation of life for the whole mystical body of the Church. Just like the blood circulation in the human body, your acts, extended within the immensity of my will extend over all, and will cover these members like skin, giving them proper growth. Therefore be attentive and faithful. Volume 13, January 25th, 1922. Now, my daughter, in order to console you, and so that you may be more attentive in listening to my truths, I want to tell you which ones are the truths that glorify me the most. They are those which regard my will, since the primary reason for which I created man was that his will be one with his Creator. But man, having withdrawn from my will, rendered himself unworthy to know the values, the effects, and all the truths it contains. This is the reason for all my attentions with you, that between me and you, our wills would run together, and be always in perfect accord. In fact, so that the soul may open the doors and become disposed to know the truths that my will contains, the first thing is wanting to live of my will. The second is wanting to know it. The third is to appreciate it. Therefore with you I opened the doors of my will, that you might know its secrets, which man had buried inside my womb, as well as its effects and the value it contains. And as many truths as you come to know about my will, so many seeds you receive, and so many divine secretaries form your cortege. Oh, how they make feast around you, having found the one to whom to confide their secret. But the most beautiful feast they will make when they will bring you to heaven, when the divinity, at your very entrance, will unleash so many different beatitudes of joy, of happiness, and of beauty, all different among themselves, which will not only inundate you, but all the blessed will take part in them. Oh, how heaven awaits your coming, to enjoy these new contentments. Volume 13, January 30th, 1922. If the creature wanted to hide my truths, it would be as if she wanted to prevent me from creating the heavens, and by the secret she would want to keep, she would dishonor me, as if someone wanted to prevent others from looking at the heavens, at the sun, and at all the other things created by me, so as not to make me known. Ah, my daughter, the truth is light, and light extends by itself. But in order for it to extend, it is necessary to make it known. The rest it will do by itself. Otherwise, it will remain compressed, without the good of being able to illuminate and to follow the course it wants. Therefore, be attentive and do not prevent me from extending the light of my truths. You have reached the end of the Be Attentive series, volumes 12 and 13. Fiat.